All right, in today's lesson, lesson 7.12, we're going to factor trinomials in the format of ax to the fourth plus bx squared plus c. So far, in our previous lessons, we factored trinomials of ax squared plus bx plus c. The only differences are that ax now is raised to the fourth power and bx now is raised to the second power and not the first power. So let's take a look at how we're going to tackle these. In my first example, I have 2x to the fourth plus 15x squared minus 50. I'm going to use the same steps that I've used before in factoring these trinomials. So the first thing I look for is the greatest common factor. Is there a greatest common factor between 2x to the fourth, 15x squared, and 50? Or is there a greatest common factor between 2, 15, and 50? I can use my calculator, or I can use my knowledge of multiplication and determine whether there is a greatest common factor between those three numbers. Okay, after I establish that there isn't one, I'm going to look at the first term of the trinomial. And I see that it is 2, the leading coefficient is 2, meaning it is greater than 1. So when the leading coefficient is greater than 1, I'm going to use my x method to factor the trinomial. So I'm going to set up my x. I'm going to multiply the first two or outer terms. So 2 times negative, that's really 2x to the fourth times negative 50. That's going to be negative 100x to the fourth. That's important. Okay, I'm going to put my second term or my middle term down on the bottom. That's going to be 15x squared. So what I have to do, I have to look for numbers or factors that multiply to negative 100x to the fourth and add up to 15x squared. Now, in the past, I've told you that what you can do, you can use your calculator. You can type into f of x equals negative 100 divided by x. You go to your table and you look at the numbers or the factors that multiply to negative 100. Which one of those add up to 15? Okay, so what you should discover by doing that is that it is going to be 20 and negative 5. So you have to be careful though, because it's not just 20 and negative 5, it's 20 because it has to add up to your 15x squared. It's going to be 20x squared and negative 5x squared. That's important. Why? Because my next step in my x method is putting those two numbers over the leading coefficient or the first term. All right, so I'm going to do this on the side because this becomes very important. Our rules of exponents come into play. So I'm going to have 20x squared. That's going to be divided by 2x to the fourth. And then I'm going to have negative 5x squared divided by 2x to the fourth. So I know that my first one, this is going to be 10. That's going to cancel, and I'm left with x squared. Because remember, our rules are when we divide exponents, we subtract them. So my second one, all right, that is already reduced. So that's going to be negative 5 over 2x squared. Once again. All right, now I can start or I can set up my binomials. So I'm going to have x squared plus 10. And the other binomial is going to be 2x squared minus 5. Now we know a check is that we multiply the two binomials together, or FOIL, and we should get back to our original trinomial. Let's take a look at number 2. I have 3x to the fourth plus 16x squared plus 16. So the first question always, do I have a greatest common factor? No. So now I'm going to go to the x. I'm going to multiply the two outer terms, and I'm going to get 48 x to the fourth. I'm going to put my middle term down on the bottom, 16x squared. I'm going to look for factors or numbers that multiply the 40x to the fourth and add up to 16x squared. That's going to be 4x to the second and 12x to the second. I'm going to put those two over our leading coefficient of 3x to the fourth. So I'm going to have 4x squared over 3x to the fourth. And I'm going to have 12x squared over 3x to the fourth. These steps are the same that we've been doing all along. Okay, so this is going to reduce to 4, that cancels, over 3x squared. Okay, the second one is going to reduce to 4 over x squared. All right, now I can set up my binomials. So I'm going to have 3x squared plus 4. And then my second one, I'm going to have x squared plus 4. All right, let's take a look at number 3. All right, what you should do for number 3, I suggest that you pause the video. Number 3 is pretty good. Pause the video and then try this one on your own. See if you could at least come up with the two binomials, and then check your answer. All right, you're back. So I have 2x to the fourth minus 9x squared plus 4. Once again, I look for that greatest common factor. I don't have it. So I go to the x. I multiply my two outer terms, and I get 8x to the fourth. I put my middle term down below. That's 9x squared. Okay, so those numbers that are going to multiply to 8 and add up to negative 9. Well, that's negative 1x squared and negative 8x squared. Okay, same step. So I'm going to have negative 1x squared over 2x to the fourth, because that's my first term. Then I'm going to have negative 8x squared over 2x to the fourth. The first one is going to be negative 1 over 2x squared. And then the second one is going to be, when I reduce it, it's going to be negative 4 over, that cancels, that's going to be 2, so it's going to be x squared. All right, let's set up those binomials. So I'm going to have 2x squared minus 1. And then the second one, I'm going to have x squared minus 4. All right, as soon as you write down x squared minus 4, you should immediately start thinking about, uh-oh, that's the difference of two squares. So that isn't factored completely. So we need to factor the difference of two squares. So I'm going to bring down my 2x squared minus 1 because that's factored completely. So I have 2x squared minus 1. And then now I know that x squared minus 4 is going to be x plus 2 times x minus 2. Now that trinomial is factored completely. Okay, our last example, 2x to the fourth minus 14x squared plus 24. I really like this one because I'm going to use the x method where the leading coefficient is not greater, the leading coefficient is 1. All right, and I told you that we can do that before, so I'm going to show an example of it now, which I think is pretty cool. Anyway, let's go through our steps. So the first thing I'm going to look for is the greatest common factor. Is there a greatest common factor between 2, 14, and 24? And you should say yes, it is 2. So I take the 2 out. Once I do that, I have to divide that to each term in the trinomial. All right, so when I divide it to the first term, I'm left with x to the fourth. When I divide it to the second term, I'm left with negative 7x squared. And when I divide it to the third term, I'm left with 12. So we want to factor that trinomial completely. So I have x to the fourth minus 7x squared plus 12. So here I go. So I have my x method. I multiply the two outer terms. I get 12x to the fourth. I bring down my middle term. That's negative 7x squared. Okay, so what factors are going to multiply to 12 and add up to negative 7? That's going to be negative 3x squared and negative 4x squared. So once again, I'm going to put those over our leading, or our first term. So I have negative 3x squared over x to the fourth. Oops. And I have negative 4x squared over x to the fourth. I'm going to reduce that. That's going to be negative 3 over x squared. And then the second one's going to be negative 4 over x squared. So let's set up our binomials. I'm going to bring down my 2. I'm going to have x squared minus 3. And then my second binomial is going to be x squared minus 4. All right, so once again, I have the difference of two squares, two perfect squares, I should say. So I'm going to bring down my 2. X squared minus 3 is factored, but x squared minus 4 is the difference of two perfect squares. That's going to factor to x plus 2 and x minus 2. And now that is factored completely, that trinomial. All right, that's good stuff because that brings in a lot of the material that we've learned before. I hope everybody is having a good day. And I do miss everybody in the classroom, so I want to make sure everybody is safe. I want you to stay safe. And if you have any questions, please shoot me an email or see me during office hours. People have been doing that, the email part. But even during the office hours, if you don't have a question, I know it's a little early, but just check in and say hello. I mean, I've had 1 or 2 students do that, and it's really good to see the students or see you guys, and I'm not just sitting there the whole time. Anyway, take care and stay safe.